The key concept of this tape of editorializing, or work of art, you might call it, pertains to Vladimir Putin's comment, either we win or it's World War III. I believe this is a key concept because it has little to do with typical European titled land skirmish. It has a lot more to do with the issues that I'm going to raise pertaining to the facts of American history and how the British interpret them. Russia is a proxy of Britain in this matter, taking aim at our right-to-know laws and social history habits of open review. And of course, they're aided by Trump's Republican Army, who tried to engage in hand-to-hand combat in the capital of the United States. I'm personally faced with the problem of infirmities that have been inflicted on me as a mockery of nonviolence. The Israelis who subjected me to things that are unconsolable felt either you let us abuse you or else. And they put it into spin by toxifying, gaslighting, and trying to get me to lash out in an Irish vernacular at them so they could play back claims of incorrect ideas. Of course, I know what happened to the Israelis. I grew up in a Jewish Holocaust survivor community. Not the living Israelis, but their ancestors. Some who are still alive, which is relevant, because the revenge attacks by Yoko Ono targeted our World War II grannies at the end. The mission of the estate at work in the Green Party is to say nonviolence has already been tried. It was tried by a European jury. See where it got them. And they believe that fascism is more a generic. It's the idea of might makes right. The power to do to others is ultimately the key to survival. And they've tried to destroy our national boundaries with claims that either we save the world or by sacrificing ourselves, or we're to blame that the world isn't saved. And the power in the royal class, the oligarchs and the oil machine corporations, took their good sweet time until it was ripe to get the third world mad at the negligence of the West. And they took liberties with me because my name is older than Harper's Magazine, the first magazine in America. And the concept that fascism is generic allows people who have grudges against the United States to say in totality the fact that America once had slaves, which is horrible, means we're Hitler. And so anything that America stands for that's different from slavery, that's different from Hitler, must surrender to foreign Hitlers who are advocating for slavery of us. And they call this dialectical. And our universities have been enlisted, and I'm going to explain how. It was by the British. In 1963, a couple of feature songs portended the era of ditties that we associate with the Beatles. Puff the Magic Dragon was released to coincide with the mindset of mourning in 1963 because of how Kennedy was killed. And I'm glad I'm not an Oscar Mayer Wiener song was released. And these songs took immediate root in the mind. And this was the beginning of the artificial intelligence craze. It's now fast crashing down on us. These things have automatic recall. And the Beatles come from what was something of an artificial intelligence royal class symposium about how to enlist people in the mind control of status and entertainment success being ultimate jurisdiction over our affairs. And the inability to show the glory of World War II that comes out in Sgt. Pepper's. The English Army had just won the war when they blow somebody's mind out in the car, which we now know referred to JFK. And having read the book, which we now know referred to the Texas School Book, was in a studied attempt to ignore that America came to the rescue of Britain, because Britain had a new idea about avenging Hiroshima and uploading Yoko Ono. Meanwhile, Ingrid Bergman had gotten in through Hollywood with her roots in Nazi German cinema. So we had these, the way that John Wilkes Booth was let into the Ford Theater. Oh, Mr. Booth, he worked there. So everybody acknowledged him and shooed him in. Well, the unwillingness to share glory with America is a characteristic of Paul McCartney's personality. He's obsessed with being first. Obsessed with being first, which he coded into things like John Lennon saying they didn't want to come to America until they were number one. Well, boom, there goes Kennedy. He got zapped between the eyes. Now they're number one. They wouldn't have been number one otherwise. And another thing, it's a telltale fact that the script pertained to double fantasy. In the script, when you look at it, it says Mark, Mark. Now, if I had thought that it was possible that Jimmy C indicated that Jimmy Carter knew about the letters to Gail Burstyn that were planted on me as Jimmy C, and his hobnobbing with Egypt and Israel was part of a fundamentalist tripartite axis of fundamentalism. I might have recognized that the men who attacked me were named Ronnie and Casper, like Reagan and Weinberger, but I was always told to shoot off from anything like seeing connections between things. And I was deaf and morbidized by brutality and being sort of strung along with everything's okay, you're going to be okay, you'll get over it. And in the script, Mark is like Mark Twain, but it's also like Mark David Chapman, Mark Mann, and Mark Mancini. Mark would have Mark Mann in it. So there's a lot of these kinds of scoundrel puns from Ronnie Zisinski. Another thing about McCartney is he loves reenactments. He projected the obsession with being number one on me and enacted a reenactment of the way the neuroplasm caused me suffering when I was a rejected lover around Leslie, because they knew virginity didn't prove right, but if they actually Pizza delivered a virgin who was Hooter from Milan, a Trumpy tune, attack prostitute of great moment to the Playboy studies. They could get everybody enraged. And it's important to remember the reason they chose me wasn't because I expected people to like me, but because my name is Old America, and you need to recognize that when they attack the Kennedys, when they attack Creary, they're attacking symbols of America and saying we need to be replaced because we're just another generic fascism. Anything you do that is patriotic is subordinated to the idea that the fascists who did this hold a higher cause. And Ono eugenics are found in the way they're using Greta Thunberg. Her middle name has Ono eugenics encrypted by Gabriel artificial intelligence. And what they did to me was the script drama. They just staged their powerful Hollywood machines. They just staged comings and goings around me that I couldn't escape because I have to walk everywhere. I can't avoid getting on a bus. I did walk a great deal more than other people to try to avoid getting on the bus. But they stage it. They tell me don't eat. Who are they to say I shouldn't eat? So if you know what Yoko Ono does, it's something that parents all over America are trying to deal with. It's their children committing suicide because they, as the deaf community put it this morning, they turn to social media for their diagnosis, and they get, bullies. And the bullies say, see, you don't like yourself. That means it's true. And they end up committing suicide. And Yoko Ono tried to grapefruit me, the way she grapefruited JFK. She tried to get me to commit suicide through social media. She tried really hard through expertise at doing that. She was bully's bully of bullies. Criminally insane, crying, shame, evil. And then she said, well, I want you to forgive the people who tortured and molested you as a child, to whom we gave your fiance, and after allowing them to rape you, or our fascists will come after you with an AIDS needle. That's what she did. That's what she said. And I don't want to should be enough, especially with all the bluster they have to say about my not letting go, about being clingy. I don't want to have anything to do with Sean Nunn. It should be enough. So, what I propose is, since I can't get anywhere, the second to getting me to commit suicide, which they haven't succeeded in doing yet. I'm trying to cheat Yoko Ono of this. But, they may stage it and then say that I did to get her licky chop satisfied. One of the people who was involved in this, who gave me the neurotrauma that was so painful and self-hatred hypnotic, was Ian Wattenmaker, who used to play a game called Bundy. W.A. Wattenmaker, that's like Washington, which is where Bundy was. He was in offices around here with governors and stuff, and then he started killing people. Ian Wattenmaker loved the Hawaii Five-0, about a two-part Hawaii Five-0 about a Nam veteran who comes back with PTSD and starts shooting people who neurohypnotically he associates with combat scenes from his memory. He loved that, and they tried to precipitate that. They tried to precipitate that through the mental health gaslighting industry. Rachel McCloskey and her friends at Sound Mental Health, Stephen Tangley, the people who poisoned me in the mouth, had Shannon Harps murdered. Yes, they did. And then they poisoned me in the mouth to get me upset so that the Jews could say, you see, nonviolence doesn't work. And everybody has the Hatter inside them. So they get the tea kettle to go off. Michael Reagan, Trumpington's friends are all laughing. We got the tea kettle to go off. Because I got upset and they locked me up over Christmas. So what I'm trying to do is what JFK failed to do, which was make it possible for somebody to follow in my footsteps. Not saying anybody will, but make it possible for somebody to try if they want to. JFK should have been more careful with Johnson and Johnson being implied. And Johnson clearly wasn't his heir apparent. Bobby Kennedy was, and I guess he sort of hoped having Bobby close to him would do the trick. It didn't. And he knew that there were going to be problems real soon in America about abortion. He talks about it in Strategy for Peace. I'm surprised that doesn't come up more, because he was saying he didn't think, he says, I do not think America will ever accept abortion. And he should have seen Johnson and Johnson and known the pressure was going to be put on him to be a mouthpiece for that. But what they did was they established this idea that people should know that you have to have a license to drive, to make love, and that, without being taught. And then they violated the whole idea of using force of arms on a child, so they could tell this drama story about me. Force of arms on a child. They didn't teach me about license, far from it. So he knew that there were going to be problems with this. And of course, the idea of curtain rods, which they said was what they took to the Oswald snuck into Texas Theater. It was probably Michael Penn, not Oswald. He snuck the rifle in. It had nothing to do with curtain rods. It was reference to Jack Ruby's Carousel Club. You string the curtains for the girls to go down on you. See, these people were actually hypocrites playing a double game. And it's like theater companies. I mean, they've been thinking about this days. Henry Bergson. It's not just paranormal that Ingrid Bergman was put in the lead role of the Hollywood backstab of the double cross system. Bergson believed that the cathode ray tube, the cinemascope, had a biological metaphor, and you can see that they adopted this idea. In Cliff Robertson's opening issue of Outer Limits, which was delayed for Kennedy's state funeral, in which he sits there staring at something like a cathode ray tube and saying, there's life in there, there's life in there. You can see the metaphor that's at work. So Ford Theater wasn't the only theater that was involved. And by the way, you should be looking into things like whether Biden and Ford, I mean, if you put Ford and Biden together, you get forbidden. Now, the Nammies have a terrible hatred of me because, and Rosa was thrown at me to give it lubrication, because they say I'm a November criminal. That's old Hitlerism about the liberals who stabbed them in the back. And, they make up stories. They just make them up out of thin air. They organize them. It's a Hollywood trap machine. Like Ian Wadmaker used to say that a woman was found with a cord around her neck. Oh, it was an accident. She got tangled up in her sleep, he said. It's clear that they mean to do this for my entire life.